It's taken a while, but at long last in this series, we're going to be looking at a track that was used primarily for the World Touring Car Championship. However, to say that the location of Porto is only associated with the WTCC in the racing world is very much untrue. However, to delve a little deeper into this circuit's history, we have to go back to when the two favourite colours of a camera were black and white. The Circuito da Boa Vista began its life in 1950 and proceeded to host sports cars variant of the Portuguese Grand Prix. It did so for precisely 3 years from 1951 to 1953, all of which were won by a Ferrari. However, the circuit would then go on to host the Portuguese Grand Prix for Formula 1 machinery in 1958. Sterling Moss would go on to win the race by over 5 minutes from Mike Hawthorne, although originally Mike wasn't classified at all after he was disqualified for restarting his Ferrari in the wrong direction. It would later be overturned because Sterling went to the stewards saying he saw said incident and thought that Mike didn't do anything wrong. Jack Brabham would go on to win the 1960 edition of the race in the Cooper Climax, but that's when racing would end in Porto. Up until 2005, when the circuit was... It's the 21st century now, I don't have to speak with a muffled sound effect. When the circuit was brought back to life. Well, not the exact same circuit. The original one was 4.6 miles / 7.4 kilometres in length, whilst this new one was just under 3 miles / 4.8 kilometres in length. However, it does follow a fair amount of the original roads that made up the Circuito da Boa Vista. So let's take a look at the circuit itself in a bit more detail. Heading down the very short start-finish straight, the first official turn is basically one you don't think about. The second one very much is though. A medium-speed left-hander which kind of has two apexes to aim for. Although that's hardly surprising as the corner itself utilises a quarter of a roundabout. Not a particularly good overtaking spot, but it does look like a really satisfying corner to get right. Also, when we look at the rest of the circuit, overtaking does seem to be something that wasn't very common or very easy. Exiting off of the roundabout, the first exit, hoping that you've clipped both apexes along the way, you now head over a bridge next to the ocean on a road which is called the Via do Castelo de Queijo? Probably messed that name up comprehensively there, so I do apologise, but once again, that shouldn't be a shock to the system if you watched my channel before. Once you go down that road though, you have another corner that utilises a roundabout, although this one is a bit tighter than the previous one. Maybe you could get passes done on the entry here, however that would require some cooperation, and in touring cars racing room is quite hard to come by. Initially this corner was quite a slow one, and that was because you'd be heading down a road called Avenida da Boa Vista, on the right hand side of a dual carriageway. This made the exit of the roundabout section look a bit awkward and slow enough to the point of having to use first gear. There was a reason for this though. If the road curved towards the left hand side of the dual carriageway, then there would be no speed breaker style chicane to stop you reaching this open 90-degree corner, yes I said that again, at 1,000,000,000 miles an hour. So to make this chicane possible, the track initially utilised the right hand side carriageway, before midway through an exceptionally tight left-right chicane was put in. With this chicane, the margin for error was non-existent, although if you did get a RON, at least this thick wall of tyres would give you a big hug if necessary. From 2011 onwards though, the road would then use the left side of the carriageway. This is where we return to the roundabout corner once again, which then became much more open and much faster. Very similar in dimensions to the first roundabout corner. But what about the imperative speed breaker chicane, I hear none of you asking? Well, they now put a new right-left chicane in to transition you to the right side carriageway, which then brought you back to the original speed breaker chicane. Both chicanes were much faster than the original singular chicane used before, however they still pose some challenges. Anyway, now that's that gone out of the way, and hopefully I don't have to say the word chicane anymore in this video. We are now getting off the Avenida da Boa Vista, and the drivers did so via the 90-degree left-hander, although to be fair, on reflection, it's more of a 110-degree corner than a 90-degree bend. With that being said though, this corner did suffer from another typical issue of street circuits: the susceptibility of producing near track blocking pileups. In some ways though, that's not a great surprise. This track in general was pretty tight, and whilst efforts were made to widen it out as the years went on, it still didn't prevent this track from suffering in the overtaking department. Now we come up to a really awesome section of track. A series of sharp kinks going right, left and then right again, ever increasing in angle, meaning the cars scythe their way nanometers away from the Armco. The last of these kinks could have been faster, if it wasn't for the tight left-hander immediately afterwards, which requires a fair amount of braking force. Trying not to cause a pileup there in the process, the Rua da Vilarinha road brings you towards a deceptively tricky 90-degree right-hander, and this one very much is a 90-degree turn this time. The camber of said bend is doing its best to help understeer your touring car into the outside wall. It's also quite fast by 90-degree corner standards, despite it being one of the tightest sections on the track. A small blast up the Rua da Via Nova you head, before coming up to another couple of 90-degree corners. Nothing particularly special here, although be careful for the potential of a black and avocado green Seat Leon making a mistake and causing a track blocking accident. The speed though picks back up again for the final section of the lap. On the Estrada da Circunvalação road, the pace goes well above 100 miles an hour, where once you go underneath a bridge that looks rather awkwardly placed, you have two fast sweeping bends. To a degree, you see the first sweeper is taken flat out, and the second one, while somewhat of an uncomfortable experience, can also be taken flat out. If it wasn't for this chicane right here. I'm going to be honest, I'm not a particular fan. I'm aware of why it's there. It's meant to slow the speeds down along the tight start-finish straight, and up to this heavy braking zone of turn 1. However, this layout just looks horrendous. Also, if someone did clip the barrier, then all of these small blocks would be thrown around everywhere, creating a massive mess. As far as I can see, no incidents of this nature happened, but if one did, that would take a long time to clear up. I'm glad that this was also changed after the first year, although if I'm totally honest, the 2009 edition wasn't a whole lot better. From 2011 onwards though, the chicane was much better. The layout has a greater flow to it, and actually looks as though it was designed for this circuit, rather than the first two iterations which look as though they were just plonked there with little rhyme or reason. The most recent version of the chicane also means the second kink prior to it can be taken flat out. Although I will say that when the races began, the chicanes were completely bypassed. However, that concludes our tour of the Circuito da Boa Vista. Overall, I quite like this circuit. Some really challenging corners in there, with some great views, and a wide variety of corners as well. Plus, I quite like the dynamic of how the circuit at one end is over a bridge next to the sea, whilst the other side is near a densely populated, more claustrophobic area of Porto. It certainly looks fantastic, however it only lasted 4 events. It was held once every 2 years from 2007 to 2013, but Porto City Council decided to end the event from that year onwards, deciding that it wasn't worth spending the €3 million every couple of years to make it happen. DTM were rumoured to be in talks to host a race in that location afterwards, but that never came to fruition. A cool circuit for sure, and it's also cool that improvements were made to the circuit every time to try and make the track flow better. In fact, just better period. Ultimately though, this track was not a success. But the place does seem steeped in lots of history compared to most of the other tracks on my list. I wouldn't mind this track hosting racing again in the future. It would be the revival of a 1950s Grand Prix circuit. That though is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any other street circuits you'd like to see featured in this series, then say in the comment section down below. Also, if you did enjoy this video, then while you're at it, I'd be enormously appreciative if you hit the like and subscribe button. But until the next video, be kind to each other and enjoy the rest of your day.